YouTube, it's Charlie from Reader Turned Writer, and today let's chat. How does your personality affect your writing? I am definitely not an expert on personality, but my brother-in-law, who would come over all the time before he left for a mission for our church, he would come over and he loved the Big Five personality test, and so we would talk about it a lot. And so then I know quite a bit about it. I'm still not an expert for sure on it, but I just know enough to have got me thinking about how it affects like writing and writing habit and what you actually write and just different things. And so today I just wanted to talk about it. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. I am going to be focusing on Big Five personality because that's the one I know most about, but if you have a different like personality method that you want to chat about in the comments, I would love to hear that too. I'm just going to quickly give an overview of the Big Five personality structure for anyone not familiar with it. Usually they try and remember it with the acronym of OCEAN. So there's openness and conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So openness is just like how open you are to ideas or how creative you are. Both of those are like, most of them have two parts that they have, and I don't understand all of the parts of each one, but some of them I know more than others. So openness has like creativity, which is like you're an artist, you like to express yourself, those kinds of things. Or openness, like you like to discuss ideas and explore different ideas really deeply. And it is different than like being open to new ideas. I mean, that's part of it, but it's really just the idea that you're open to exploring new ideas, not that you're open to like accepting ideas right away, but that you want to dig really deep into an issue. And then conscientiousness has to do with like work, and there's two parts to that too, industriousness and orderliness. So orderliness is just people who like to be really organized. I am very organized. I love lists, to-do lists, that kind of thing. And that's like one way that it manifests, but it can manifest in other ways, like people liking to be neat or like not wanting to have like food on their hands when they're a kid, that kind of thing. And then industriousness is just like your drive to work. How high is your drive to work? Or can you actually sit down and relax? Extroversion is where your energy comes from. If you're extroverted, then you get your energy from being around people, and if you're introverted, then you get your energy from being alone. Energy is also a part of extroversion. Like, are you a really high energy person? Are you kind of more calm? And then agreeableness is just kind of like conflict. Can you deal with conflict? Are you afraid of conflict, or do you not care about conflict at all? You know, like agreeable people will try and people please usually, and disagreeable people will be more likely to be able to like say what they think, that kind of thing. And agreeable people, generally it comes from either wanting to be polite or empathizing with other people. So if you want to be polite, then you're going to be more worried about what other people are thinking about you, where if you're empathetic in agreeableness, high in empathy, if you're high in empathy and agreeableness, then you're going to be thinking like, I feel the way that they're feeling and I don't want them to feel that way, kind of thing. And then there's neuroticism, which is the one that I know the least about, but it just has to do with like negative emotions. So if you're high in neuroticism, you generally have higher negative emotions, like anxiety, sadness, those kinds of things. Neuroticism also has to do with things like worrying about the future, which ties in with anxiety. If you worry about certain things a lot, then you are probably higher in neuroticism if you worry about like the future. I tend to be an optimist, so I'm lower in neuroticism in that way, although I do feel sadness quite a bit and frustration. But I think a lot of that stems from my orderliness, so I don't know. I do want to just point out really fast too that none of the personality traits are negative. If you're high in, for example, neuroticism or low in neuroticism, neither of those is good. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. I also want to point out that it is a scale. It's not like, oh, I am agreeable. It's more like, how high are you in agreeable? If you're like 90% agreeable, then you can probably say I'm agreeable. But it is a scale, and it is a bell curve scale, and so most people will fall in the middle with most of the traits. So moving on to how it affects writing. So I'm just going to tell you, I kind of listed out beforehand some of the ways that I thought of that it affects our writing, and then you can let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree, and any that you thought of yourself. Okay, so the first area that I immediately thought of was just the way that habits are. So like, for example, I try and write every single day, but I'm also high and orderly. So I write at the same time every day, doing the same thing. And that is how you create a habit. And I do believe anyone could do that, even if they're not orderly. But for me, it works really well partially because of my orderliness. Someone who is really high in conscientiousness, they might actually prefer NaNoWriMo, where you sit down and you just write. You just get it all out at once, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. And they might actually prefer that. I don't actually prefer that. I'm not high enough in conscientiousness, I don't think. Although I do want to do NaNoWriMo eventually. I'm just going to work my way up to it. Where conscientious people, I think, are more likely to just power through a draft. Conscientious people might be more likely to create a writing habit. I'm not sure. It might depend on their orderliness as well. And when I say conscientious, I mean industrious. Under conscientious, because both orderliness and industrious are under conscientiousness. I hope this is not too confusing if you haven't heard of the Big Five personality before. Another trait that could affect your habit is your extroversion, or where you are in the extroversion scale. So if you're really extroverted, then you're probably going to love to do things like writing sprints with other people, or go to a cafe to write, or meet up with friends to all write at the same time or something. Or, you know, have something where you're with people or connect with people while you're writing or after you're writing and things like that. Where if you're introverted, then you're probably going to find a time when you're totally alone and it's totally quiet, and, you know, that's what I do. I am kind of in the middle on that scale, but I do think I lean more towards introversion than extroversion. And I've never tried a writing sprint, but it honestly doesn't appeal to me. Even like buddy reading and stuff was stressful to me. I prefer to read and write just kind of on my own, and then talk with people afterwards about it. And that's kind of what I prefer, and I think my personality plays a part in that. Agreeableness could affect it in how guarded you are with your writing time. If you have a hard time saying no to people, then you might not be quite as willing to say, no, I'm writing at this time. And that could affect it. I don't know. I had a harder time finding how agreeableness would affect a writing habit. Maybe it doesn't affect it as much. If you feel like you're really agreeable or disagreeable, and again, that's not a negative turn, it's just where you are on the scale, because both have benefits, then just let me know in the comments below if you feel like it affects the way that you write and your writing habit. And then neuroticism, I thought neuroticism might affect it in just like your motivation. Like if you have really negative feelings some days, then those days I feel like it would be really hard to write. And I feel this, I have days that are really hard for me emotionally, and I think on those days I have a hard time writing, and sometimes I literally just write for just a couple minutes to get my writing habit in, and I don't actually work on my book more. And I can imagine that if you have anxiety, because I've never really experienced like high anxiety, but I can imagine that anxiety would make it really hard to focus on writing that day and getting your writing time in. I also think it might affect the way that you, just like your process, like for me, and this could, I don't know if this is totally true, but like for me, having an outline this time around has made a huge difference for me. I have loved outlining. I love planning my book. And I love planning everything. So of course I love planning my book, but it has been so fun to like plan out my book before I actually write it. And it's not an issue for me to sit down and write the things that I've already planned. It's actually really fun. It's more fun for me to write things that I've already planned. It doesn't feel like I've already done that part. Where I know for some people, making an outline is like, it feels like they've already written the book and then they lose interest, and then it's hard to actually write the book. Although I do think that there could be methods to get over that if you wanted to outline still, but I'll talk about that in a different video. But I think that my orderliness does play a part in that, because I am really high in orderliness. I don't think I know anyone else in real life. I might know some through this channel, but I don't know anyone else in real life who is as orderly as I am. And so I really enjoy planning out my novels, where someone who is low in orderliness but high in industriousness, who they might just power through a draft, right? Like, or if you're really high in openness, you might love the exploration of it, and so then planning it out feels rigid to you, where you just want to explore the idea and see where it goes, and you know, like your creativity comes out in that way. And I could totally see that happening with someone who is high in openness. I also could see personality being a little bit of a roadblock sometimes with writing. Like for me, my perfectionism got in the way of me actually finishing drafts for a while. And I think I wasn't quite high enough in conscientiousness to just keep pushing through, but high enough in orderliness that I really wanted it to be perfect. Or if you are open and you read a lot of books, then you're going to be like, that's part of what kept me back. I read so much. So then I would read a book, I'd be excited about writing a book, I'd sit down and I'd be like, well, this isn't as good as the books that I read, and then I wouldn't want to write it anymore, right? And so that can affect it. Or like neuroticism, if you have anxiety or negative emotions, I wonder if that could affect the way that you see your book and keep you from finishing a draft. If you're really extroverted, then you might not have as much time to set aside towards writing because you spend so much time with other people, or you might feel that it's not as invigorating to sit down and write alone. And so then you might need to find something like writing sprints, where you're writing with other people and getting that energy from other people while you're doing a more solitary act. And like I said before, if you're agreeable, then you might not guard your writing time as much. You might have a harder time putting yourself first. You might feel like you need to put other people first and do things that other people want you to do, rather than making sure that you're getting in the thing that's most important to you, if writing is the most important thing to you. And I definitely think that all of these roadblocks have things that you can do to get over them. Like, I don't think that you are trapped by your personality. I do believe in personality. I do believe that we are born with a certain personality, and that there isn't actually a lot that we can do to change that personality. If you get your energy alone, I don't think that you can like change that by spending more time with other people. I think that will just be draining for you. But I do believe that we can learn skills that naturally come to certain personalities. Like if you're introverted, then you can still learn the people skills that someone who is extroverted might naturally learn just because they love to be around people. And I think that we can use our personalities and the strengths that come with those personalities to find systems that work for us to get where we want to go. So like, let's say you want to write a book with a really good ending, so you feel like you need to outline, but you just don't like outlining. Maybe you're too high in openness, or you're not high enough in orderliness or something. I believe that you can still find a way to outline in a way that would work for you and give you the ending that you still wanted for your book, even if it wasn't. And maybe that just means that you know what your ending is and you edit a lot as you on your second draft. Or, you know, I don't know, I might do a different video about that as well. But if you're interested in a video talking about that kind of topic, like, I don't know what the topic would be, like using the strengths of your personality to create the method to get where you want to go. That sounds really vague, but if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments below, and I would love to talk more about that and find a more concrete title for that video. But I definitely don't think that we should be using our personalities as excuses, like, oh well, I just love to explore my novel, and so I'm just not going to write good endings even though I really want to. But if you don't, that's totally fine. Like, some people, the ending is not as important to them. Like, I know tons of people like Stephen King, right? And I have heard that his endings just aren't quite as powerful, like hard-hitting, but his characters are so good, and the situations that he puts them in and everything are just so engrossing that people don't mind that his endings are just kind of the same as, you know, that's totally fine. Where Brandon Sanderson really, really outlines his books, and his endings are so hard-hitting, and for me that's really important. That's why he's one of my favorite authors, and I would love to write books like that. And so if I want to write books that have really good endings, I think that outlining is a really good way to get there. But I am naturally like outlining, and so it's easier for me. But someone else might find a different way to get really good endings, you know, or they might find a way to outline even if they don't enjoy it, or find a way to make it more enjoyable for them. Or there's just so many different ways that you can write that there's no one right way to do it. One right way, haha. That was a bad pun. Anyway, I'm going to move on with my personality video now. So one of the things that I think is interesting is that studies have found that people who are high in openness are more likely to read books than people who are low in openness, because books tend to help you explore ideas and concepts and understand other people, and people low in openness might not enjoy that as much. And so then I wonder if people who are high in openness are more likely to write. I don't know if there's been any studies like that, but I do think that if you read a lot, you're much more likely to become a writer. The other thing they found is actually that introverted people tend to read more, and introversion and openness are not actually correlated. And so you can be really low in openness and really high in introversion, and really enjoy reading, and I wonder if it's because that is part of the way that they get like their social needs filled without their energy feeling drained or whatever. That's just a theory. I have no idea if that's a real thing. But so then I wonder if people who are higher in introversion are more likely to become writers as well. I don't know. And is that actually a deterrent? Like, if you are introverted, does it make it harder to write because you're not around other people, so then it's harder to write characters? Or are you more likely to do things like people watch and read books, so then you understand people really well still and are able to write characters really well? Or is that a skill that you'll need to develop? I don't know. These are all just like questions that I have. So then the last thing that I've been thinking about with writing is just like the actual writing, like your book itself. And does personality affect that? Like, first of all, is it hard to write personalities that are opposite of yours? Like, would it be hard for an introvert to write an extroverted person? I don't know. Probably the more extreme you are, the more it affects it. The other thing is like, so with agreeableness, agreeable people don't like conflict. So then I wonder if it would be harder for people who are high in agreeableness to write conflict into their story and make bad things happen to their characters, because they're going to feel that in like an empathy sort of way, where they're going to feel what their character is feeling and they're not going to want to put their character in that situation. And I kind of feel that sometimes, where it's like hard to create tension because I'm like, I don't want the tension, I don't want bad things to happen to my character. Or would it be bad for them to write bad characters? Not like poorly written characters, but like villains. I don't know if agreeableness affects that, but I feel like that happens to me sometimes. Like, I don't want my characters to be bad, I want them to be good people. And I don't know that I'll ever write a negative character arc, because I love redemption arcs, but I don't like negative character arcs as much, and I think part of that comes from my personality. If you have neuroticism, would it be easier for you to write some of those negative experiences because you've experienced them, those like feelings yourself? Like, is it easier to write a character who experiences anxiety if you've experienced anxiety? It feels like it would be. I don't know. But so then if you experience those negative emotions, then it might be easier to write those characters as experiencing those emotions as well. And if you are high in openness, then your book might be more creative, like more unique in the way that it is written, because you're able to explore ideas or go in ways that other people didn't see coming because of the way that like your mind works. And I know that creativity is a skill. It's a skill that open people develop naturally, and I feel like that creativity is a skill that I'm still working on developing, so it's something I'm self-conscious of. But I do think that that is an interesting idea. Yeah, so those are basically my thoughts on personality. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I would love to hear about your personality. I would love to hear about your favorite personality test and what you think, how it affects your writing and or reading habits. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for lots more content. Thank you so much for watching my video. I will see you in the next one.